Who were you before you lost your wild self?
That's what we're helping you explore on the Tend Her Wild podcast.
Through questions and tools around how best to listen to your inner voice,
rewild ourselves, and live the most authentic life where we thrive instead of survive.
I'm Betsy.
And I'm Kate.
And we're so glad you've joined us for this episode. So take us, this is 5.5 years later, and you mentioned a number. How many treatments have you been through at this point? Over 100.
Yeah, I'm on my probably 11th version of treatment. I think that I have had 104 rounds of treatment.
So you've been, because I actually do want to get into your journey with hope and despair and this sort of metamorphosis, this shifting of who you are as a human. So the last 5.5 years have looked like you in treatment, and you had to stop working. You're not working as a psychologist currently. You've watched both of your kids graduate from high school, get into college. All the while, your work has essentially been treating this cancer. Mm-hmm. And so this is hard to sum up, but how do you even, who you were on that day that you were diagnosed, where you felt great, you didn't think anything was wrong, you were high on life, to where you sit today, the change in who Brenda Crawford is, what has that looked like? I mean, I've had a vantage point at various points in time along those 5.5 years. But how would you describe this new woman that we're talking to, this changed human, because of this long health journey that you've been on?
The first word that comes up for me, and I'm trying to figure out if it's a head word or a heart word, is balanced. I feel like I've been forced to accept kind of the good and the bad of literally everything, because so much of what I have experienced, there's been a lot of really, really rough stuff. But there's also been so many beautiful things that have come out of it. It's not lost on me that at a time when I literally thought that I had very little time left, my kids and my husband were forced to be in this house with me 24/7. And all of their friends were going through the same thing. And so
meaning COVID, like everyone was just
everyone was hunkered down. And so it didn't feel like I was punishing them. But I feel like the big transition that I see for myself is I felt such tremendous guilt about what I was doing to my family with this diagnosis initially. I felt like I was ruining their lives. And in a way, and I hope that they see it similarly, I feel like all of our lives have been bettered because of it.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm so much more mindful of small moments. So I was not very good, and I didn't know this at the time. I thought I was great at this, but I was not good at self-care. I thought I was. I thought I was doing everything right, but I spent so much of my time making sure everybody else was okay. Mm-hmm. And as long as everybody else was okay, then I was okay. And this diagnosis very quickly snapped me into just radical self-care.
Yeah.
Radical. To the point that I quit my job. I left my private practice. And that was incredibly painful. Um, I started this journey of meditation, yoga, trying to adopt yoga as a lifestyle, like and comfort. So I hadn't really realized how much of my just daily life that I did things that were kind of uncomfortable for me because they were expected of me.
Yeah.
And so, I feel like over the last 5 years, there's been such a shift in like avoiding conflict, but not in an avoidant way. Like there are just some things that I just can't tolerate anymore. Um, my soul is incredibly sensitive, and so there are a lot of things in my environment that I just won't do anymore
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're
because
listening to your soul like
it's
in a new way.
uncomfortable for me.
Yeah.
Um, and I feel like just in general, we become so desensitized to so much stuff. I don't want to be desensitized. Like I want to have the reactions to things that are supposed to elicit reactions. But so I feel like there became this necessity that I still had children to raise, relationships that were important to me. My marriage was very important to me. I was petrified about what this was going to do to my relationship with him because, as a psychologist, unfortunately, I had worked with people who had divorced in the middle of cancer treatment, who had been abandoned by a spouse during cancer treatment. And the odds are not real great when you look at that. I've had some interesting conversations with my doctors and the nursing staff in oncology at Mayo, and it's staggering the amount of marital discord that happens, particularly when, in a cisgendered
Yeah.
relationship,
Yeah.
when the wife gets sick, the husband has a really, really hard time with it
Yeah.
generally. So that was very scary for me. But I also, so I mean, fast forward when school started that year in 2020, I lived in a place where the kids went back to school right away in August. So they weren't remote. I mean, they went back to school, and there was a lot of pushback about wearing masks, and nobody wanted to do that here. And it was going to cause brain damage in the kids if they had to wear their masks and, free will. And I shouldn't sound so disparaging about that. It was incredibly frustrating for
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
sure it was.
because, at the time, I have two very active teenagers who are involved in literally every like high school activity that you could possibly think of. And, I was basically told if you get COVID, it could very likely kill you. So you can't get COVID. I didn't leave my house other than for doctor's appointments for 18 months,
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
walking around the neighborhood. But, I mean,
Yeah.
there was so much fear, just
Mhm.
constant fear. And my poor children, I think, were also just constantly fearful that they could bring it home to me. They were both fiercely like
Yep.
Protective
Protective
of
of
you.
you.
defective with teachers that were difficult. Teachers who had COVID and came back to school, probably still symptomatic. And then when she refused to be in their classroom, like they threatened to kick her out of school for that. Like there,
Wow.
I mean, it was a really, really difficult time
Yeah.
for my children. Um, And I mean, for all of us, really. So,
Yeah.
but at the same time, I'm watching my kids. My son was a football player and was incredibly successful, and he was also the drum major in the marching band. And so I got to see him like direct the band in his football uniform. And, he
You started to be really present for things in a
Yeah.
new way, it seemed like.
oh,
And like you said, holding both, right? The
Yeah.
joy of those
yes.
moments.
I mean, and I came to realize, like, as a psychologist, I feel like it became because I became I was alone a lot. I was alone a lot. And it reminded me of so many other times in my life dealing with medical things that I was alone a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
and I could say that I could never have been prepared for what came to me, but everything that happened in my life
You
prepared
were.
It did.
Yeah.
everything in my life prepared me for it. So, I spent a lot of time thinking about how, like, what's the legacy that I want to leave behind? I cannot control the fact that this is terribly difficult for everyone that I know who cares about me, who wishes they could do something. And we had tremendous support from our community, which I am very, very grateful for. Um, but like no one was going to live it for me and no one was going to do it for me. And I've had lots of people say, I couldn't do what you've done. And you can't, you just can't say that. Like you
You don't know
don't
until
really
you're there.
know. And another thing that, my dad's Catholic, and so, I mean, God doesn't give you more than you can handle. And I'm like, can I cuss, by the way?
Yes,
Yeah,
you please.
please
We encourage
rock it
it.
out.
Bullshit.
Yeah.
God, the universe gives you more than you can handle all the time,
Yeah.
all the time. And I feel
I
like
agree.
the reason for that is because like we have to learn to surrender. We
Mhm.
have to learn to surrender to what we cannot control. We have to learn to ask for help, support. And if we were not faced with more than we could handle, we would never do that. We would never have the need for spirituality. We would never have the need for like the assistance of something bigger,
Yeah.
greater
Right.
than us. We would not need our community. We would not need friends. Like if we could just always handle, if the universe just only gives us as much as we could handle, like that's bullshit.
Yeah.
That is so not true. We always get more than we can handle. And it's lessons in going outside of ourselves. So, like, the biggest ways that I have changed, number one is spiritual sovereignty. I try so hard to stay out of other people's way. The lessons that their souls need to learn, the experiences that they need to have, it has been very difficult at times. Um, Particularly with my children, but they're doing okay. And they are and have been more brilliant than I have given them credit for, and so wise because of what we have faced as a family.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's not always been easy. And I'm sure they didn't always like me through things because when you were home alone by yourself all day and your 14-year-old daughter comes home from volleyball practice, the first thing that you want to do is like, tell me all about your
Pounce.
day.
Yeah.
And she generally wanted nothing to do with that, like a typical 14-year-old. But they're also like, I can't fathom being a young teenager and considering like watching your mom through cancer treatment that we did very quickly tell them, this is incurable, it is inoperable, they can't do anything about it
Yeah.
Yeah.
other than treatment. Like, I am in palliative care and I have been in palliative care for 5.5 years. Everything that they do is to try to keep me stable. It's to keep tumors from growing or spreading. Sometimes they shrink, but not very often.
Mm.
So stability is the goal. And that was really hard for my children, I think.
Yeah.
And it just has become this new normal. I've never not been in treatment of some kind. For a very long time, we were up at Mayo every 2 weeks, every
Yeah.
12 to 14 days for a treatment. And, it would be kind of rough for 3 or 4 days after I came home. And then it would be okay. And then it would be right back into it. And the number of times that, because Ryan went off to college, the number of times that Mackenzie was alone here at home, because
Yeah.
we would leave first thing in the morning, run up, do appointments, get my treatment, drive back home sometimes in the same day.
Mm.
Um, just the amount of kind of overnight maturity
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
growth that it required of my children
Yeah.
just for us to be able to do things. Because, I mean, this again was at a time that Mayo had restrictions. They wanted the same person coming with you because they wanted as few like exposures as possible. I was having to get, COVID tested before every single treatment.
Mm.
I think I've been COVID tested like 25 times, something like that. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
ridiculous. Um, and and at the time we couldn't have people come into our house. So
Yeah.
Right,
You
to
had to,
help care for you.
yeah. And
Yeah.
isolation. I mean, there was there's so many people were isolated, but you really were isolated
You know,
throughout
and I think
this.
about like, the meal trains that people do
Oh, yeah.
when people get sick, like
None of that, huh?
all of my friends wanted to be able to do that and couldn't. Like
Yeah.
nobody could even come to our house. No, because they were all so afraid
Yeah.
that they'd been exposed and we were starting to learn about COVID and you might be symptomatic or might not be symptomatic, but you know,
Carrier.
you're a carrier. And I mean, and like all of these people were dying and, and particularly immunocompromised
Yeah.
were dying. And, I have tumors in my lungs for crying out loud. Like, I don't need help,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Right.
know? So, I mean, it was just this crazy time.
Yeah. It really was.
And, and
S-
I just think about how resilient my children were through
Yeah.
all of
You've been resilient. Your whole
Yeah.
family's been resilient, and there's been so much growth. As we start to wrap up here, hope for you.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked, I know you did the Tend Her program with us too, that there's hope and despair. They're sisters. They go hand in hand. You don't have to work with hope unless you have despair. And you've even brought up that moment when you first found out and there was such despair. Where do you stand in your relationship to hope at this moment, 5.5, 6 years into this palliative care experience, and this building of a legacy? And yeah, what's your relationship to hope?
I feel I feel like it is something that tension of opposites, you know, um, being able to hold both because it became very clear to me that this was a pretty intense roller coaster that I was going to be on.
Mhm.
And early on, I get scans every 2 months. And so the scanxiety is real, I mean, the fear of what's going to come up on scans.
Oh.
And so early on, before I've come to where I am right now, there were so many ups and downs, and and I would go from hoping for a particular result, right? Like that I would get good news. I didn't realize early on that stability was a good thing. And so every time I didn't have shrinkage, I felt disappointed. Um, so I feel like one of the things for me is releasing the expectation of a
Yeah.
certain outcome. And I have spent my entire life expecting certain outcomes, and it's made me incredibly successful,
Yeah.
actually. So that's been a lesson that's been tough for me to learn, and I'm still working on that. But just, being having an expectation for a certain outcome is not useful to me. I've come to realize scans are just information. Anything that I'm getting from my doctors is just information, and I have to trust future me to handle it.
Mm.
And I have become so faithful in her. And that was something that I really feel like through Reclaim, through classes that I've taken, is just realizing that there is a wiser version of me that like I'm wiser today than I was 5 years ago. I'm handling this better
Absolutely. Yeah.
than I did 5 years ago, although she did a pretty bang up job. I've got to give her credit.
Yeah.
And, I've got to give 5-year-old me credit for how she handled being in the hospital for 2 weeks by herself.
Yep.
Yes.
Like all of these struggles, if you want to call them that, have prepared me to just continually shift and evolve and change. And I trust that future me will be better than I am today, and she will figure it out. So like there is peace in that.
Mm.
I also feel like I said, I've come to accept that there are going to be places of despair in this journey. And I feel like we all have that. And I think the one thing well, there are a lot of things I wasn't prepared for, but one thing that I was really not prepared for is just the ongoing grief and bereavement that I feel.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm.
I think a lot about the concept of, 10,000 joys and 10,000 sorrows, right? And I mean, this journey, I kind of in my head, I'm sort of like a full life is 1,000 deaths, like
Yes.
Yes.
Over and over. I
my
agree.
word, like the number of deaths that I have felt in the last 5.5 years. And I know at one point, Betsy, you and I kind of spoke privately about this. There's just so much ongoing grief.
Yeah.
And it's not just with my health that I've felt that. Like, it's deaths of previous versions of me,
Yeah.
it's deaths of like the the way that things have been in my household. I'm an empty nester now, and it's great. No, and sorry, I just snorted, but like, I mean, there are so many beautiful things about it. And I just realized for myself, I could not continue to ride the roller coaster. I knew that there were going to be ups and downs, but I had to find a way to just accept it all. Acceptance has been hard. Surrender has been sort of my word of the year for like 3 years or something.
Mm.
I mean, it's like it
A
is
good one.
Yep.
so
It
hard for
is.
me to just surrender and allow things to unfold.
Yeah.
But so many things when I have allowed things, so many wonderful things have unfolded for me that I didn't even have to do, like, so recently I had scans a week ago, and I had kind of bad scans in February, and so we had to go back to a pretty intensive chemotherapy that's really hard on me. It requires me to be on steroids. I gained 20 pounds. That's a whole nother conversation that we could have about just the trusting your body to do what it needs to
Yeah.
do.
Right.
And uh, it doesn't always look the way that you want it to.
Yeah.
But anyway, I was on a really, really intensive therapy that was, I mean, pretty hard. And so scans in June, I just didn't know what to expect. And one thing that I can expect is that if there is something good that's happening on scans, there's always something else that they're like, but this is happening. So we're seeing a little bit of reduction in your tumors in your liver, but your spleen is enlarged. Or we're seeing this improvement in this tumor, but there's a couple spots on your lung that we don't know if that's metastasis or if it's mucus or if it's
Right.
dust. So we're just going to keep an eye on that. This is a total aside, but like in the fall, I had an ovarian cyst that was the size of a grapefruit that just came out of nowhere. That was terrifying. So like I don't even remember the results of those scans because I was so scared about, oh, things look stable, but you have, this grapefruit size thing on your left ovary. I mean, it's always
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
It does not matter how I try to mentally prepare myself for all of the possible options. There's always an option I'm not thinking of. So in June, scans came back. I had a little bit of stability, a little bit of tumor reduction in certain areas. But then my doctor says, so we took the liberty to test some of your biopsy material because apparently they keep it. I didn't know
Mm.
that. So they have, biopsy tissue from years ago. And they did some testing on it, and there is a brand new clinical trial treatment that I'm like 100% match for.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
So, I mean, I feel
Wow.
like this whole and again, I'm just trying to
No,
be
yeah. Surrender.
Yeah.
like,
Here we are.
if
Surrender.
it's
Stay
meant for
steady.
me, it's meant for me right now. The treatment that I'm on appears to be working. So there's no reason to abandon it until it's not working. And what might have to happen because of clinical trial funding and
Yeah.
challenges that are happening right now. I have a lot of feelings about that, and it's very scary. They may have to do like a case study. I may be the only one in a clinical trial for this new drug. Um, that is also very, very scary
Sure.
because, I mean,
You don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
you don't know, but you're telling me there's a chance.
Yeah. There's hope.
Yes,
There's
there's
some
the hope.
hope.
There's the
There's
So,
hope.
the
I mean,
hope.
it's just like both my husband and I mean, obviously there were tears. You can't not have a response to it, but we really try to be very like balanced in our approach to information that we receive from
Yeah.
my medical
Right.
team, which is just absolutely incredible. And I trust them just in with every cell of my
Yeah.
being.
You really do.
Mm.
And I'm so lucky to have them. But so there's hope.
There is
There's
hope.
hope.
There is hope. All
But
right.
you
But
know,
yeah, we don't know. There's this free
oh,
fall surrender that you're
Yeah.
into. So I'm really curious what your answer is going to be for this last question, which I know you have heard
Coming.
many times. You know this question, but I'm curious about it because I just want to circle us back around to the no bio Brenda and the beauty of that. Because what I've seen and continue to observe in this interview today is just this willingness to keep like the idea of the thousand deaths, right? Like there's another part of me that's dying off. There's another part of me. There's another part of me. And that in some ways you're getting very comfortable in this space now. It's not that it's not without challenge or emotion, but you really are surrendering into the not knowing, not the not controlling, the we'll see how this goes. And so I really like this idea of you not having a bio,
I
right?
know.
Like I'm
Yeah.
just me and I'm showing up every day and it's always changing.
Yeah. The evolution is such a through line for you too. Like the evolution of you during this process is serving you, right? It's
Yeah.
allowing you to hold the light in the dark. And but you said something earlier about still honoring all those old versions of you, right? That showed up for you how they needed to then. And so we are this compilation of all these versions of ourselves, and yet we can keep evolving to meet the next, obstacle or the next. You've been on the spiritual journey, right?
Yeah.
To have spiritual sovereignty, and that's serving you so beautifully. And you articulated that so well today. And it's been an honor to witness you tell your story because there's so much wisdom in it.
Yeah.
So much wisdom.
So much.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So the doors.
Yeah.
Which door?
Yeah.
Which door? Because you're a wild, bioless woman, right? Like showing up every day in surrender, not knowing what's coming next. So
So
Kate,
if
the doors.
if you have an old story, that's a door. You have a deep scar, that's a door. You love the sky and the water so much you can almost not bear it, that is a door. And if you yearn for a deeper life, a full life, a sane life, that is a door. So
Can I
is there
say
one?
all of
You
them?
can absolutely say all of them.
Um, water. Oh my gosh. Like, I
That
mean,
came up in your story
oh,
early on.
and
Yeah.
my whole life, I passed senior life saving when I was 9 years old. I
Of
did.
course you did.
I did. I had to tread water for 2 hours.
Wow.
Past that, and I did. But the scar. Oh my goodness. It wasn't until I was sort of in the thick of all of this that I realized how many versions of myself have been through this exact thing, sort of at the level that that version of me could handle it, because each one got more intense. So when I was hospitalized at 5, you know, I was very well taken care of, and I had nurses that were around me who were friends of my parents, but like I was still alone, right?
Yeah.
And it was scary. I was hospitalized again at 11 because I had a terrible gallbladder attack, which is fascinating. But I was in the hospital for like 5 days. Again, kind of alone, by myself, not really knowing what was going on. Car accident, uh, terrifying, horrific, awful, pretty bad, and then this, but each.
Yeah.
So I feel like that is both a scar and opportunities for healing, I guess, rebirth. Every time I think of these deaths, I've just come to accept that death is part of life for me anyway. And it's not always a bad thing. And some deaths are more painful than others. Some actually feel pretty good. And there's this kind of like phoenix rising sort of energy that comes from accepting that I know that my soul chose this journey for me.
Mhm.
I don't necessarily know exactly why, um, but I know it's not over yet,
Yeah.
and I spent a lot of the first probably 2 years constantly thinking about cancer, constantly thinking about dying and how I could cheat death. Like, what decision did I need to make today to just get a little bit more time? And that's all I've really ever wanted, is just more time.
Mhm.
And I trust that whoever these new versions of me are going to be are going to continue making good decisions to just keep me here for as long as I'm supposed to be.
Mm,
So
beautiful.
it's the meditation and little things. I do not take for granted. I make a beautiful cup of coffee for myself every single morning. I don't take that for granted. Eating is meditative for me. Walking is meditative for me. I spend as much time as I can outside with my flowers. I am an avid bird watcher. And so, like, I have little bird cameras and I watch birdies. There's so much beauty all around us all the time that I think we've become
You
so
finally see, don't you?
blind
You
to.
see it.
The little tiny things that I do for myself every single day because
Beautiful.
she deserves it. And my daughter said not that long ago, she said, we were talking and, she had posted something on TikTok or something about, be the woman that younger you would run to.
Mm,
And there's something so powerful for me about that. And so, I've just decided that I'm just going to continue to be that woman every single
beautiful.
Yeah.
day.
You are living a sane,
Full
full
life.
life. You really
Trying
are.
to,
You really are.
it's,
Mm.
yeah. So I
Thank you.
have the scar. I love the water. I want that life.
Yeah, you're living it. I really feel that. Thank
do
you so
too.
much for sharing so much vulnerability and also what I think is going to be so much hope for people
Mhm.
who have been in similar situations or are or will be, just how to gracefully move through such a big diagnosis and the unknowns and still be waking up every morning feeling gratitude and making your beautiful coffee and enjoying the birds and really being in this life fully appreciating it. And you're doing a bang up job of that, Brenda.
Yes, you are. You're a beautiful example of how to live.
Yeah, truly, truly.
I
And
just,
how to die too. Like it's both and like you said, all these parts are dying and it's all there. So there's the light and the dark of hope, right? That there is life and there's death and it's all together.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
We
I'm
love
just
you, Brenda.
grateful. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. It's the first time that I have um, spoken my story publicly,
Mm.
Mm.
We're so
and
glad we
so
could give you this opportunity.
I'm really honored, and particularly for my husband and my kids and my family, um, because, leaving a legacy of trying to encounter life's complexity with grace and determination, and also just a little bit of like willing to accept that you're not going to do it perfectly and it's okay to screw up and it's okay to make bad decisions,
Yeah.
you know, and just to be kind to yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're capable of so much. So I'm honored that you thought that this was worthy of
Mm.
talking with you guys, and I'm just so grateful to know you both. And yeah, thank
Beautiful.
you.
Thank you, Brenda.
Thank you,
You're a
Brenda.
beautiful soul.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today. If you like this podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review. Come back and rewild with us again next week.